After nearly a decade of being erased from the family map, I bought an entire vacation villa right by the sea. When my mother called to deliver her usual rejection speech, I told her, "I'm sorry, Mom, but just like in your house, in mine, there are no rooms left. My name is Elena Vargas. I am an architect and independent interior designer, and above all a widowed mother of two incredible children, Diego, who is 10, and Sofia, who is 8. My younger sister Valeria Castillo is 35 years old, married to an executive named Mateo, and they have 3 children. My mother Carmen, who is 62, has always had an unhealthy weakness for her. To my mother, Valeria was the sun that lit up the family, and I was barely the shadow. For the last 9 years our family has had the tradition of spending the entire month of August at my mother's summer house on the Costa Blanca. It is an immense chalet with 5 bedrooms, huge terraces, and beautiful views of the Mediterranean. Plenty of space for a normal family reunion, right? Well, no. Every month of May, like clockwork, my mother would call me to deliver the same rehearsed speech. "Elena, darling, I'm so sorry, but this year there simply is no room for you at the beach house. Valeria's family has grown so much, they have so many suitcases, and the children need their space to play. Maybe next summer we can work something out." Meanwhile, Valeria received royal treatment. Mom would spend entire weeks filling the pantry with her whims, buying new beach toys and preparing the rooms as if it were a 5-star hotel. They acted as if they were the absolute owners of the place, spreading their things everywhere and ignoring that the rest of the world existed. Do you know what was the worst of all? Seeing the faces of my children every July. Diego and Sofia would ask me with that innocence that breaks your soul, "Why can't we go make sandcastles with Grandma and our cousins?" What was I supposed to answer? That their grandmother did not consider us important enough. But the exclusion was not limited only to the lack of space in summer. 3 years ago, Valeria and Mateo bought a chalet on the outskirts of Madrid. Valeria had the audacity to call me and demand that I design the complete renovation of the house and direct the entire work for free. Because we're family, she argued with her usual condescending tone. When I refused, explaining that I worked for myself, that I had bills to pay and 2 mouths to feed alone, she declared war on me. She began telling everyone that my work was a waste of time, that I only did odd jobs on the computer, and that my refusal was pure envy for her success. Mom, of course, bought her version of the story. Since I worked from home sometimes until 3 in the morning drawing plans, Mom assumed I was practically unemployed. "Elena is still trying to find herself," she would say to the aunts at Christmas dinners, sighing dramatically. The turning point, the last straw, happened last summer during my mother's birthday dinner. I had just signed the most important contract of my life, the complete interior design for a new chain of luxury boutique hotels. It was a huge project that guaranteed us financial peace for a long time. I was so excited that I made the mistake of sharing the news at the table. "That's nice, dear," Mom said in an absent tone without looking up from her glass of wine. Valeria, on the other hand, let out a dry laugh. She looked me up and down, and with a voice loud enough for all the guests to hear, she fired, "Oh, Elena, how nice that you keep playing businesswoman, but let's see if you get a real job with a fixed salary so you can pay for your own vacations and stop being pitiful. The rest of us shouldn't sacrifice our family time because you don't know how to organize your life." The dining room fell into a sepulchral silence. I looked at my mother, hoping, longing that for once in her life she would defend me, but she simply nodded and caressed my sister's hand. "Valeria is right, darling. Mateo works very hard at his office, and those children deserve to rest. When you have a more stable career, we will look for a little spot for you." I swallowed. I felt the blood burning in my veins, but I kept my face impassive. I smiled softly and nodded exactly as I had done for the last 9 years. "I understand perfectly, Mom. I hope you enjoy the beach very much," I replied in a calm voice. But inside something had slammed shut. I was tired, definitely tired of being the punching bag of this family. And in that precise instant, while I watched them toasting and laughing, I decided that my response would not be words but actions. That same night, after the humiliating birthday dinner, I returned home with absolute mental clarity. The contract for the boutique hotel chain was only the first domino. My name began to circulate quickly through the most exclusive design circles in Spain. Suddenly I had more high-profile clients than I could handle alone. I raised my fees, I became much more selective with projects, and by November I had founded my own architecture and interior design studio. I hired 3 junior architects, a project manager, and rented a beautiful office in the center. The income began to multiply in a way that I myself would not have imagined in my wildest dreams, but I made a strategic and vital decision. Not to tell my family absolutely anything. To my mother and Valeria, I was still the same Elena who barely made ends meet. I kept driving my old seat with a couple of dents in the door. I kept wearing the same simple clothes as always and living in the same modest apartment. Since they never showed genuine interest in my life, maintaining the farce was surprisingly easy. In their eyes, I was still the poor widow who did odd jobs on the computer. February arrived, the exact time when my mother used to start preparing the ground for her famous summer exclusion speech. It was then, while reviewing some properties for a client, that I found the villa. It was an old ruined tourist complex located in a spectacular private cove on the coast of Andalusia. It had 12 independent villas, a main building of natural stone, and direct access to an almost virgin white sand beach. The previous owners had taken it to absolute bankruptcy, and the bank was selling it for a ridiculous fraction of its real value. I made an offer that same afternoon and bought it in cash. During the next 4 months, I poured my body and soul into that place. Being an architect, I did not need to hire an external studio. I drew every plan myself, chose every material, and directed the work to the millimeter. I invested a large part of my savings in a complete renovation that took the breath away. I designed interiors with a minimalist Mediterranean style, built an infinity pool that seemed to merge directly with the sea horizon, and created a huge children's play area specially designed for Diego and Sofia. When the work was finished in May, the place was unrecognizable. I renamed it the Oasis Resort. It was a 5-star boutique complex with a high cuisine restaurant and a subtle but impeccable level of luxury. And the most important thing of all, it was mine, completely mine. We did a quiet opening in June with some exclusive clients to polish details, and it was a resounding success. At the end of that same month, my phone rang. It was my mother. Punctual to her annual appointment. "Elena, darling, I'm so sorry, but..." I did not let her finish the sentence. "I know, Mom. There is no room," I responded with a serenity that instantly unsettled her. "Don't worry at all. Diego, Sofia, and I already have other plans for this summer." "Oh, how nice, daughter. Where are you going?" she asked with that tone that mixed relief and condescending curiosity. "To a place I found around there, nothing special," I answered, smiling while I looked at the plans of my empire on the desk. The first week of July, I took my children to the Oasis. I assigned them the main villa, a huge suite with panoramic views of the Mediterranean and private access to the beach. And when Diego and Sofia crossed the door and understood that we would spend the whole summer there, their faces lit up in a way I will never forget. "Mom, can we really stay here?" Sofia asked, caressing the linen sheets. Finally, my children had the spectacular vacations that their cousins had always taken for granted. But the true masterstroke came at the beginning of August. I started making phone calls. First, I called Uncle Ricardo and Aunt Elena. They had always been affectionate with my children, the only ones who sent us gifts at Christmas without distinctions. "Uncle Ricardo," I said, "I want to invite you to spend the Assumption Bridge at a resort. Everything paid, accommodation, meals, activities, everything. I have had an exceptional year at the studio, and I want to share it with the people who really matter to me." Then I called my friend Lucia, who was about to get married, and her parents. I called my second cousins, who had always had economic problems but were the noblest people I knew. I called every member of our extended family who had ever made us feel included, who had ever asked me how I was, with genuine interest. I rented the entire resort just for us during the long August bridge. I hired a private chef to design exclusive menus. I organized wine tastings on the terraces for the adults and hired water sports monitors for the children. We were a total of 24 people from the family, ready to enjoy absolute luxury vacations. Of course, I did not invite my mother, and of course I did not invite Valeria nor her perfect husband Matteo. The trap was set, and the shock wave of what was about to happen was going to shake the foundations of our family forever. The August bridge passed like a dream. All my extended family, 24 people in total, arrived at the Oasis Resort and were left absolutely speechless. They walked through the impeccable gardens, dined on high cuisine dishes prepared by our executive chef, and toasted under the stars. My children Diego and Sofia ran happily on the sand with their second cousins without feeling less than anyone, without having to settle for the leftovers of affection from their own grandmother. On Saturday night, after a spectacular dinner on the main terrace, Uncle Ricardo pulled me aside. He had a glass of wine in his hand and looked at me with a mixture of astonishment and deep respect. "Elena, this is incredible," he told me, lowering his voice. "You have organized something truly magical. Your mother must be bursting with pride. Why couldn't they come?" I looked him in the eyes, kept absolute calm, and answered, "Mom doesn't know anything about this, Ricardo, and they are not here because I did not invite them." My uncle frowned, clearly confused. "What do you mean you didn't invite them? Elena, she is your mother and Valeria is your sister. This is a family reunion." I sighed, letting the sea breeze caress my face before releasing the truth I had been keeping for almost a decade. "Ricardo, during the last 9 years, Mom has told me every summer that there was not enough space in her beach chalet for me and my children. She has systematically excluded us because Valeria's family needed a lot of space and was more important. So this year I decided to organize my own family reunion in my own resort, and unfortunately it turns out that in my resort there is also not enough space for them. The silence of my uncle was deafening. He needed no more explanations. The truth spread like wildfire among the guests the same night. Everyone in the family knew the contempt with which Valeria treated me. Everyone had heard my mother's cheap excuses over the years. And upon realizing what I had built alone in complete silence, the respect towards me multiplied by 1,000. On Monday morning, while my guests checked out to return to their homes, my phone began to vibrate on the reception counter. It was my mother. I let it ring 3 times before answering with a neutral voice. "Tell me, Mom." "Elena, where the hell are you?" she shouted on the other end of the line with a high hysterical voice. "Ricardo just called me to tell me a ridiculous story. He says you invited everyone to a luxury resort that is supposedly yours. Tell me right now that it is a lie." "It is true, Mom." There was a sepulchral silence on the other side. I could hear her labored breathing. "What? How can it be true? You don't have that kind of money. You do little jobs from home." "Apparently, Mom, I have a lot more money than you and Valeria have always assumed." Her tone changed drastically. It went from arrogance to victimist reproach in a second. "Elena, I'm very confused. If you could afford something like this, why didn't you tell us? Why did you invite half the family and leave us out?" I enjoyed every thousandth of a second before pronouncing my response. "Because you told me there was no space in your beach house." "Well, I inform you that in my 5-star resort there is also no room, but that is completely different. The beach house is small for so many people," my mother stammered. "But Elena, we are family." "How curious that you remember that just now," I replied coldly and hung up. 5 minutes later, Valeria called. She was beside herself. "You are resentful, Elena. Mom is crying inconsolably. How can you do this to us? You are breaking the family over a stupid tantrum." "I have not broken anything, Valeria. I have only stopped participating in my own mistreatment. You said I should look for a real job to pay for my own vacations. Well, that is what I did. I bought my own paradise. Enjoy the beach." And I temporarily blocked her number. But my mother was not going to give up so easily. The next day, Tuesday afternoon, the unthinkable happened. I was in the management office reviewing some plans when my internal phone rang. It was Antonio, our head of security, at the main entrance. "Ms. Elena, sorry to bother you. We have an altercation at the main barrier. There is a lady in a white SUV demanding to enter immediately. She is very upset and claims to be your mother." I opened the security camera monitor on my computer, and there was my mother dressed in designer clothes from head to toe, banging on the security booth window and yelling at my employees. She had driven more than 3 hours from her chalet just to check with her own eyes if the story of my resort was true, or worse, to try to sneak in and put on a victimhood spectacle. I felt for the first time in my life that power was on my side. "Antonio," I said through the intercom with a firm and professional voice. "Is that lady's name on the VIP guest list, or does she have any active reservation in our system?" "No, Mom, I already checked." Then politely explained to her that this is a private and exclusive premises. Tell her that if she does not have a reservation, she must turn her car around and leave immediately. And if she refuses to move the vehicle, call the Guardia Civil. Through the monitor, I saw Antonia leave the booth and relay my message. I saw my mother's face crumble, losing all color. She looked towards the imposing facade of the main building, knowing perfectly that I was watching her from above. Defeated, humiliated in front of the security staff and other clients who were waiting to enter, she had to put the car in reverse, turn around clumsily, and disappear down the coastal road. That day I learned an invaluable lesson. There is no more destructive and elegant revenge than a door closed with your own rules. The weeks after the incident at the resort entrance were surprisingly peaceful. My architecture business continued to expand, and the oasis was fully booked until the end of the year. When December arrived, my mother made one last desperate attempt to maintain appearances. She called to invite me to the traditional Christmas Eve dinner at her chalet. "Elena, I hope you come. We have argued enough, but at Christmas the family has to be united," she told me with that martyr tone she also mastered. "Will there be room for everyone at the table, Mom?" I asked without a drop of sarcasm, only with coldness. "Your dining table has capacity for 8 people. Valeria's family are 5. You and Dad are 2. That makes 7. Where are Diego, Sophia, and I supposed to sit?" "Well, we will manage. We always do. We will put some folding chairs towards the hallway," she murmured. Of course. Valeria and her husband in the head chairs, and my children eating in folding chairs in a corner. "I appreciate it, Mom, but for the first time in my life I am being realistic about the place I occupy in this family. We will pass." Instead, I organized a spectacular Christmas Eve dinner in the main hall of the oasis. I invited Uncle Ricardo, Aunt Elena, and all the cousins who had always treated us with affection. We were 25 people toasting with French champagne. It was the first Christmas in almost a decade in which I did not have to listen to passive-aggressive comments about my bank account nor see my children receive cheap gifts while their cousins opened last-generation consoles. The true test of fire came in May of the following year with the wedding of my niece Lucia. Lucia called me personally. Aunt Elena, I know things are very tense with Grandma and Aunt Valeria. But I beg you to come. You are my favorite aunt and what you did for us in August was unforgettable. I want you there. Lucia was a wonderful girl who did not deserve for family dramas to ruin her big day. I will be there, my love, I promised. But I am going to bring my own security. I hired 2 professional private escorts, 2 impeccably dressed men in dark suits, discreet but intimidating. I did not do it out of physical fear, I did it as an insurance policy against drama. I knew Valeria and I knew that a couple of glasses of wine would be enough for her to try to make a scene. We arrived at the estate where the wedding was taking place and heads turned immediately. I wore an exclusive designer emerald green dress. Sophia looked like a fairy tale princess and Diego wore a custom suit that fit him perfectly. Behind us, a couple of meters away, walked my 2 private escorts. My mother saw us during the cocktail. She took a step towards me, but upon noticing the look of one of the escorts she stopped dead. She only nodded from a distance with a mixture of regret and cowardice. However, Valeria did not have the same filter. After midnight during the dance and with a clear excess of alcohol in her blood, she approached staggering towards the table where I was sitting. So much security and so much luxury, huh? She dragged the words, leaning heavily on my chair. Do you really think you are superior to us, Elena? You are splitting this family in 2 with your arrogance. I looked her up and down without altering my relaxed posture. I am not splitting anything, Valeria. I am only existing in a space where your insults no longer have validity. She let out a bitter laugh and leaned towards me with bloodshot eyes. You are so ungrateful. You know something? Deep down you should thank Mom and me. We were hard on you, yes, but it was for your own good. If we had not closed the doors on you, if we had not pressured you to stop being a failure, you would never have had the rage to build that resort of yours. Our rejection is what made you rich. You should kiss the ground we walk on. I stayed looking at her for a long second. The absolute brazenness, the audacity of trying to appropriate my success was fascinating. I stood up slowly, equaling her height but infinitely surpassing her in class. Do not be mistaken, Valeria, I whispered with an icy voice that cut the air between us. You were not a stimulus, you were an anchor. You tried to bury me alive because it made you feel powerful to see someone suffering below you. You closed the doors because you wanted to see me beg. The only problem with your perfect plan is that you did not know I was a seed. And now look at me while you remain trapped begging for Mom's approval in a life full of appearances. I am the owner of the entire garden. Valeria remained paralyzed with her mouth open, unable to articulate a single word. Just at that moment, Marcos, my head of escorts, took a step forward and gently interposed between the 2. Is there any problem here, Ms. Elena? Marcos asked with a sweet and professional voice. None, Marcos, I smiled without taking my eyes off my sister. The lady is already leaving. She has realized that here there is also no room for her. Valeria turned humiliated and disappeared into the crowd while I returned to take my glass of champagne. Elegance will always be the best slap. The echo of that wedding night resonated for months in the foundations of our family. The news of how I had confronted Valeria and my impeccable security team spread from mouth to mouth. No one dared anymore to look down on me and much less to question my success. By October, my professional life had reached an unstoppable cruising speed. My architecture studio signed international contracts and the Oasis Resort had a waiting list of a full year. It was then that my investor partner Roberto presented me with an irresistible opportunity. It was an old bankrupt mountain refuge located on one of the most exclusive slopes of Sierra Nevada. It needed a complete renovation and an audacious architectural vision. We closed the deal in less than a week. I named it White Peaks and began to design a winter boutique hotel with thermal spa wooden cabins with panoramic glass and private ski slopes. While I built my second empire, the perfect facade of Valeria's life began to crack. Uncle Ricardo told me at a lunch that Mateo, my sister's husband, had been demoted in his company. They maintained their immense chalet in Madrid on the basis of credits and financial suffocation, choked by the sick need to maintain a level of life they no longer possessed. The prison of appearances they themselves had created was devouring them from within. Late November arrived. As if it were a time loop, my phone rang again with my mother's name on the screen. This time her tone was not of condescending exclusion but of an artificial sweetness that turned my stomach. Elena, darling, I have been thinking, she began, dragging the words. What do you think if this year we break the tradition and celebrate Christmas at the Oasis? I could invite my country club friends and a couple of distant cousins. I would love to show them all the wonderful resort my daughter has built. I closed my eyes for a second, amazed at her infinite capacity to rewrite history. Now that I was an undeniable success, suddenly she wanted to use me as her personal showcase. She wanted to hang the medal of my triumph in front of her high society friends. The resort is 100% booked for all the holidays, Mom, I responded in a professional tone. I do not have a single villa free. But Elena, surely you can cancel some reservation or move some client. I am your mother, for God's sake. You should have a deference with your family. I am not going to disappoint clients who pay for my work to accommodate people who spent 9 years making it clear that I was not their priority, I sentenced with ice sharpening every syllable. I am trying to fix things, Elena. I am trying to build a bridge, she exclaimed, raising her voice with frustration. No, Mom. You are trying to make things convenient for you. There is a big difference, I replied. Do you want to fix things for real? Very well, I will tell you exactly what I need. There was a tense silence on the other end of the line. What do you want? She asked defensively. I want you to admit out loud and in front of everyone that you were unfair. I want you to recognize that there was always plenty of space in the beach house, but you chose to give it all to Valeria. And the most important thing of all, Mom, I want you to sit in front of Diego and Sophia, look them in the eyes and apologize for making them feel that they were not good enough for their own grandmother. I heard her breathing become agitated. Pride is a poison difficult to swallow. I never wanted the children to feel bad. I was only trying to keep the peace and do the best for the family at that moment. The intention does not erase the impact, Mom, I said, feeling a mixture of pity and definitive liberation. The damage is done. I cannot accept that you refuse to acknowledge it. You are going to throw our relationship overboard for a tantrum from the past, she accused in one last attempt at manipulation. I am not throwing anything overboard, Mom. I have simply stopped teaching my children that being family means having to accept less than what one deserves. And without adding another word, I cut the call. I stayed looking through the large window of my office. In the distance, the sun reflected on the calm waters of the Mediterranean. My breathing was calm, serene. I had built my own castle, and no one, absolutely no one, was going to leave my children out of it again. In March of the following year, we officially inaugurated White Peaks with a private opening. I invited the same group of loyal family members who had accompanied me at the Oasis, plus several partners and close friends. The place was simply spectacular. The snow covered the roofs of the wooden cabins while the steam from the thermal pools rose towards the starry sky of Sierra Nevada. During the gala dinner, Uncle Ricardo stood up and raised his crystal glass. I want to say something about my niece Elena, he announced with a solemn voice, attracting everyone's attention. Just 2 years ago, some in this family thought she was lost, that she barely managed to survive. They were wrong. She was not lost. She was building. She was creating something grand and eternal while the others settle for the usual appearances. I toast to Elena, who has shown us all that success is not begged, it is built. Everyone raised their glasses, and in that instant I felt a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the wine. A week after that inauguration, my phone rang again. It was Valeria. At first I hesitated to answer, but I slid my finger across the screen. This time her voice had no trace of that toxic arrogance from the wedding. She sounded exhausted, fragile, deeply defeated. Elena, can we talk, but really talk, she murmured. I am listening, Valeria. There was a long silence, broken only by a trembling sigh. I want to apologize to you. I have been thinking a lot about what you told me at Lucia's wedding, and you were right, absolutely right. I remained silent, letting her continue. I was envious, Elena, an envy that ate me inside. Envy of your talent, of your freedom, of the fact that you were building something that was genuinely yours. Matteo and I have a good standard of living, yes, but we are drowning in debts. We live trapped in a lie, pretending to be perfect so that Mom applauds us. I mocked you, belittled your work, and supported Mom to leave you out of the vacations because convincing others that you were a failure was the only way I had to feel superior. Hearing that confession was like seeing a stone wall crumble that had been blocking the sun for 9 years. I am so sorry for having supported Mom's cruelty, she continued with a voice broken by tears. I am sorry for having set Diego and Sophia aside. I am sorry for making you feel that you did not deserve respect. Do you think there is any possibility of starting from zero? I breathed deeply. Resentment is a poison that you drink hoping the other dies. And I no longer wanted any more poison in my life. I forgive you, Valeria, I responded with a serene and sincere voice. I accept your apologies, but we are not going back to the way it was before. We can build a new relationship based on respect, but my limits now are unbreakable. I am no longer the little sister who bows her head to keep the peace. I understand, and I respect it very much, she said, sounding relieved. Then she hesitated a second before asking. Would it be okay if this summer I bring my children to visit the oasis? They want to see their cousins and see what their aunt has built. I sketched a small smile, feeling the weight of my own authority. Of course, Valeria, I will be delighted to receive them. Send me the dates that suit you and I will tell reception to send you the rate with a small family discount. As clients, you will be very welcome. She caught the message instantly. There was no longer all-inclusive or privileges. Now they were on my territory. It seems perfect to me, Elena. Thank you, she answered with humility. Almost 2 years have passed since I bought the ruin resort. My architecture studio now has more than 20 employees and international projects. The Oasis and White Peaks operate with very high waiting lists and give work to 80 people. Diego and Sophia are flourishing. They are confident, happy children who perfectly understand their worth. My mother and I talk from time to time. It is a slow process, but at least now she treats me with the respect I earn the hard way. Valeria and her family spent 10 days at the Oasis last summer paying their full bill. There were no passive-aggressive comments, no reproaches, only two families sharing time on equal terms. They say that blood is thicker than water, but the original and complete quote reads like this. The blood of the pact is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds that you choose and cultivate are infinitely stronger than those with which you were born by chance. Sometimes the perfect revenge has nothing to do with destroying others. Sometimes the perfect revenge is simply refusing to make yourself small so that others feel big. If ever your own family or life itself tells you that you are not enough, if they tell you that there is no space for you in their lives, listen to me well. Do not cry, do not beg for a chair at anyone's table. Build your own table, build your own space, and then raise an empire. Because when you are the one who designs the plans, there will always, absolutely always be plenty of room. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.